The morning sun was just peeking through the tall pine trees as Raj adjusted his camera equipment. The crisp autumn air made his breath visible in small clouds as he carefully set up his tripod on the damp forest ground. As a wildlife photographer, he had spent countless mornings like this one in the Cascade Mountains, but today felt different somehow. The abandoned logging road stretched ahead of him, winding through the dense forest like a ribbon. Raj had chosen this spot hoping to catch some early morning shots of deer coming down to the nearby stream. He'd been tracking their movement patterns for weeks, and this looked promising. But just as he was about to snap his first photo, a sound caught his attention. At first, it was so faint he almost missed it, a weak whimper carried by the morning breeze. Raj lowered his camera, listening intently. There it was again, a bit louder this time, coming from somewhere off the old road. His heart started beating faster. In all his years of wildlife photography, he'd learned that unexpected sounds could mean either danger or something incredible. He grabbed his backpack, leaving his tripod behind, and carefully moved toward the sound. The whimpering grew louder as he pushed through thick undergrowth. Thorny bushes caught at his jacket, but he pressed on. The sound led him to a massive fallen tree, its roots torn from the ground, probably from the big storm last week. That's when he saw it. A flash of fur beneath the tangled mess of branches and dirt. Raj dropped to his knees, peering into the dark space under the fallen tree. Two frightened eyes stared back at him. It was a dog, a German shepherd, trapped under the debris. The poor thing looked terrible. Its fur was matted with mud and leaves, and one of its legs was pinned awkwardly beneath a heavy branch. "Hey there, buddy," Raj said softly, trying to sound as gentle as possible. The dog's ears perked up at his voice, but it let out a low growl, scared and defensive. Raj could see its ribs showing through its dirty coat. This dog had been out here for a while. He reached slowly into his backpack and pulled out his water bottle and some trail mix. "Look what I've got," he said, pouring some water into his cupped hand and holding it out. The dog's growl faded, replaced by a look of desperate thirst. After a moment's hesitation, it stretched its neck out as far as possible to lap at the water. While the dog drank, Raj noticed something around its neck, a worn collar barely visible under the matted fur. This wasn't a wild animal. This was someone's pet, lost and alone in the wilderness. How long had it been out here? How had it survived? Looking at the heavy branches pinning the dog down, Raj knew his peaceful morning of photography was over. This was going to be a rescue mission, and it wouldn't be easy. The dog needed help, and right now he was its only hope. He pulled out his phone to check for signal. Nothing, as usual in these remote parts. The nearest town was 3 miles back down the mountain. He'd need tools to free the dog, and he couldn't leave it here alone much longer. Time was running out, and the temperature would drop again soon. What Raj didn't know then was that this unexpected discovery would change not just his morning plans, but the lives of several people and one very special dog in ways he could never have imagined. Raj knew he couldn't just leave the trapped dog while he went for help. The autumn temperature was dropping, and the poor thing had already been alone for who knows how long. Looking around, he spotted some fallen branches that might work as levers. He'd have to try freeing the dog with what he had on hand. The German shepherd watched him cautiously as he gathered supplies. Its initial growls had turned into soft whimpers, almost like it knew help had finally arrived. Raj could see now that the dog's collar had a tag. Luna was her name. "Don't worry, Luna," he whispered. "We're going to get you out of here." Getting closer, Raj noticed how the debris had created a kind of pocket around Luna. She wasn't completely crushed, which was lucky, but one big branch was pinning her back leg. He'd need to be extremely careful. One wrong move could make things worse. "This might be a bit scary," Raj told Luna as he positioned the first branch as a lever. "But I promise I'm trying to help." He started lifting slowly, testing the weight. Luna whined but stayed still, as if understanding the importance of not moving. The branch shifted slightly. Progress, but not enough. For the next 2 hours, Raj worked tirelessly. His hands were scratched and dirty, his back aching from the awkward position. He had to stop occasionally to give Luna water and gentle words of encouragement. The sun climbed higher in the sky, warming the forest around them. Finally, after what felt like forever, the last branch moved enough for Luna to wiggle free. But when she tried to stand, she collapsed with a yelp. Her back leg was definitely injured, possibly broken. She was also terribly thin. Her ribs showed clearly through her matted fur. Raj took off his jacket, laying it on the ground. "Come on, girl," he coaxed, carefully sliding his arms under her body. Luna tensed but didn't resist as he lifted her onto the jacket. She was surprisingly light for her size, another sign of how long she'd been lost out here. The 3-mile hike back to his truck would be challenging. Luna weighed about 50 pounds, and the trail was steep in places, but Raj wrapped her securely in his jacket and lifted her into his arms. "Let's get you some help," he said, starting the long walk back. Every few minutes, Raj had to stop to catch his breath and adjust his grip. Luna stayed remarkably calm, occasionally licking his hand as if saying thank you. The morning's photography plans were long forgotten. Right now, saving this dog was all that mattered. The sun was high overhead when they finally reached his truck. Raj's arms were shaking from exhaustion, but his heart felt light. Luna was safe now, and that's what counted. He carefully arranged his photography blankets in the back seat to make a comfortable bed for her. As he drove toward town, Raj kept glancing in his rearview mirror at Luna. She had fallen asleep, probably feeling truly safe for the first time in months. Looking at her collar tag again, he noticed something else, a tiny serial number. Maybe, just maybe, that would help them find her family. What started as a simple morning of wildlife photography had turned into something much more important. Sometimes, Raj thought, the best photos are the ones we never take, because we're too busy being part of the story instead of just capturing it. The small-town veterinary clinic burst into action the moment Raj carried Luna through the doors. The front desk clerk, Mrs. Patel, immediately called for help when she saw the condition of the German Shepherd in his arms. Within seconds, Dr. Mehra and 2 vet techs rushed out with a stretcher. "Found her trapped under a fallen tree in the mountains," Raj explained quickly as they carefully transferred Luna onto the stretcher. "She's been out there a while, I think." Dr. Mehra nodded, her experienced eyes already assessing the situation. Luna's matted fur, visible ribs, and injured leg told the story of survival. "Let's get her into exam room 1, Dr. Mehra directed her team. "She's severely dehydrated." Raj followed them, not wanting to leave Luna's side just yet. The dog kept looking for him, as if making sure her rescuer was still there. The bond formed during their morning ordeal was already strong. The examination revealed the full extent of Luna's condition. Her back leg was indeed broken, though thankfully a clean break that could heal well with proper care. She had multiple infections from untreated cuts, and her paw pads were worn raw from months of wandering. But what amazed everyone was her will to survive. "Wait a minute," Dr. Mehra said, running a scanner over Luna's shoulder. "She's microchipped." The small device, no bigger than a grain of rice, held the key to Luna's past. Mrs. Patel quickly entered the chip number into their database, and suddenly, Luna's story began to unfold. "She belongs to the Sharma family," Mrs. Patel called from her computer. "They reported her missing 6 months ago during a camping trip. They've been searching ever since." Tears welled up in her eyes as she dialed the number on file. They never gave up hope. While they waited for Luna's family to arrive, the clinic team worked quickly to make her comfortable. They cleaned her wounds, started her on antibiotics, and gave her fluids through an IV. Luna remained surprisingly calm through it all, only whimpering slightly when they touched her injured leg. "You know," Dr. Mehra said to Raj as they watched Luna doze off under warm blankets, "most dogs wouldn't have survived this long in the wild. She must have found water sources and somehow managed to find enough food to stay alive. She's quite remarkable." Raj sat next to Luna's bed, gently stroking her head. The matted fur was slowly being cleaned and detangled by one of the vet techs. Under all the dirt and leaves, her beautiful German Shepherd coat was starting to show through. "She just needed someone to find her," Raj said softly. The clinic door chime rang, and everyone heard rapid footsteps approaching. A family of 4 rushed in, led by a young girl about 12 years old. The moment they appeared in the doorway, Luna's tail started wagging weakly. Despite her exhaustion and pain, she recognized them instantly. "Luna!" The young girl cried out, tears streaming down her face. She ran to the bed but stopped short, seeing all the medical equipment. Her mother put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Careful, Priya. Luna's been through a lot." The reunion that followed brought tears to everyone's eyes. Luna's family gathered around her bed, talking softly to her, telling her how much they missed her and how they never stopped looking. Priya couldn't stop crying, and even her usually stoic father had to wipe his eyes several times. As Raj watched the scene unfold, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. His changed plans this morning had led to this moment, a family made whole again, a lost dog found, and a reminder that sometimes the best things in life happen when we least expect them. The Sharma family couldn't stop staring at Luna, almost afraid she might disappear again if they looked away. Priya sat cross-legged beside her dog's bed, talking softly about everything Luna had missed during the past 6 months. The young girl's eyes were red from crying, but her smile could have lit up the entire room. "We searched everywhere," Mrs. Sharma explained to Raj, her voice catching slightly. "Put up posters, joined every lost pet group, drove through the camping area every weekend for months." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Priya took it the hardest. She barely smiled the whole time Luna was gone. Mr. Sharma added, "The camping trip was supposed to be our big family adventure. Luna loved hiking with us, always staying close, never wandering off. Then that morning she just vanished. We'd heard her bark once far away, but by the time we got there, he shook his head, the memory still painful. Dr. Mehra came in to explain Luna's treatment plan. The broken leg would need surgery, but they were optimistic about a full recovery. She's severely malnourished and has some infections, but she's young and strong. With proper care and lots of love, she should be back to her old self in a few months." Priya's little brother, Arun, who had been quietly observing until now, suddenly asked the question everyone had been wondering. How did Luna survive so long in the forest? The room fell silent, all eyes turning to the brave dog who had somehow made it through 6 months alone in the wilderness. "She must have found water from streams," Raj shared what he'd observed. "There were deer trails near where I found her, so maybe she followed them to water sources. And she probably caught small animals, though she's clearly lost a lot of weight." Luna's tail thumped weakly against the bed at the sound of his voice. The family listened intently as Raj described finding Luna under the fallen tree. Priya gasped when he mentioned how long he spent freeing her, and Mrs. Sharma reached out to squeeze his hand in gratitude. "We can never thank you enough," she said softly. "You've brought our family back together." Looking at her phone, Mrs. Sharma smiled through tears. "Look at this," she said, showing everyone a photo of Luna from before she went missing. The contrast was striking. In the photo, Luna was a proud, healthy German shepherd with gleaming fur and bright eyes. Now she was thin and injured, but her spirit remained unbroken. "Do you know what today is?" Arun suddenly remembered, his eyes widening. "It's exactly 6 months since Luna disappeared. To the day." The coincidence made everyone pause. Even Dr. Mehra looked surprised. It seemed almost like fate had guided Raj to that specific spot on this specific morning. As the day went on, friends and relatives who had helped in the search for Luna began arriving at the clinic. Each person had their own story of looking for her, of consoling Priya, of hoping against hope. The small exam room filled with joy and tears as everyone celebrated Luna's miraculous return. Through it all, Luna kept her eyes on her family, especially Priya. Despite her injuries and exhaustion, her tail would wag every time the young girl spoke to her. It was clear that even after 6 months in the wilderness, Luna had never forgotten the people she loved. "She's going to need lots of care during recovery," Dr. Mehra explained to the family. "Regular checkups, physical therapy, special food to help her regain weight." Priya immediately raised her hand as if in school. "I'll take care of everything," she promised solemnly. "I'm never letting Luna out of my sight again." The weeks following Luna's rescue were filled with small victories and steady progress. After successful surgery on her leg, she began the long journey of recovery at home. The Sharma family transformed their living room into a comfortable recovery space, with Luna's bed positioned where she could always see everyone. Raj found himself visiting regularly, drawn by both concern for Luna and the warm welcome he always received from the family. Each visit showed visible improvements in Luna's condition. Her fur was growing back thick and shiny, her wounds were healing, and the haunted look in her eyes was replaced by a gentle contentment. "Look, she's eating so much better now," Priya would exclaim during these visits, proudly showing Raj how Luna's ribs were less visible each week. The young girl had taken her role as Luna's primary caregiver very seriously. She maintained a detailed chart of medications, feeding times, and physical therapy exercises, impressing even Dr. Mehra with her dedication. The physical therapy sessions became a family affair. Mr. Sharma would gently support Luna's weight, while Mrs. Sharma encouraged her with treats. Arun would cheer from the sidelines, celebrating every small step Luna took. And Priya, always by Luna's side, would whisper constant words of encouragement. "You should have seen her yesterday," Arun told Raj excitedly during one visit. "She actually chased her ball for a few steps." The family shared a video of the moment, Luna's first playful moment since her return. Though her movements were still wobbly, her tail wagged with pure joy, showing glimpses of her old self returning. What touched Raj most was how Luna responded to his visits. Despite forming strong bonds with many people during her recovery, she had a special way of greeting him. She would thump her tail against the floor the moment she heard his voice, as if remembering that crucial morning in the forest when he had spent hours freeing her from the fallen tree. The Sharma house became a gathering place for neighbors and friends who had helped search for Luna. They would bring treats and share in the joy of her recovery. One elderly neighbor, who had spent countless hours putting up lost dog posters, burst into tears the first time she saw Luna wag her tail again. Priya's transformation was just as remarkable as Luna's. The sadness that had haunted her during Luna's absence melted away. She started smiling more, laughing often, and even began writing a story about Luna's adventure for her school project. "But the best part," she told Raj, "is that Luna is helping me write it. She remembers everything, I can tell." During one evening visit, Mrs. Sharma shared some photos she'd been taking to document Luna's recovery. The progression was stunning. From the thin, injured dog they'd brought home to an increasingly healthy and happy family member. "We're not just healing her body," she explained, watching Luna doze peacefully surrounded by her family. "We're healing her spirit too." On the days when Luna had checkups at the clinic, Raj would often arrange his schedule to be there. Dr. Mehra always commented on Luna's remarkable progress, noting how the love of her family, combined with her own fighting spirit, was creating what she called a miracle recovery. As weeks turned into months, Luna's limp became less noticeable, though she would always favor that leg slightly. But what she lacked in physical perfection, she made up for in heart. Her journey had transformed not just her life, but the lives of everyone around her, creating bonds that went far deeper than any ordinary pet-human relationship. "You know what's amazing?" Priya said to Raj one afternoon as they watched Luna playing in the backyard. "She never gave up out there in the forest, and now she's teaching us all about being brave too." Looking at Luna's joyful face as she basked in the sun, surrounded by love, it was hard to imagine she was the same dog he'd found that fateful morning under the fallen tree. Luna's incredible survival story started spreading beyond their small town. It began when Raj, inspired by her journey, shared some photographs he'd taken during her recovery on his photography website. The before and after images captured people's hearts instantly. The contrast between the frightened, injured dog he'd found and the happy, healing Luna touched something deep in everyone who saw them. "Your photos tell such a powerful story," Mrs. Sharma told Raj one evening as they watched Luna playing with Priya in the backyard. The German Shepherd was now strong enough to play fetch, though she still took careful steps with her healed leg. They help people understand what it means to never give up hope. The local newspaper picked up Luna's story, featuring Raj's photographs alongside an article about her rescue and recovery. Soon, other news outlets became interested. People were drawn to the tale of a lost dog who survived 6 months in the wilderness and the photographer who happened to be in exactly the right place at the right time. Raj found his photography work shifting in an unexpected direction. Instead of just capturing wildlife, he began documenting animal rescue stories. His camera now focused on the emotional moments when lost pets reunited with their families or when abandoned animals found new homes. Each photo captured the pure joy and love that made these moments so special. "Look what came in the mail today," Priya announced one afternoon, bursting into the living room with a stack of letters. People from all over had started writing to Luna, sharing stories of their own lost and found pets. Some even sent photos of their dogs, and Priya started a scrapbook to keep them all. The Sharma family, touched by the outpouring of support, decided to turn their experience into something bigger. Mr. Sharma used his tech skills to create a website where people could post about lost pets in the area. Mrs. Sharma organized a network of volunteers who could quickly respond to sightings. Even Yon Arun helped by designing bright, eye-catching lost pet poster templates that people could easily customize. "We know exactly how it feels," Mrs. Sharma explained to a group of volunteers. "Those months without Luna were the hardest our family has ever faced. If we can help even one other family avoid that pain or find their lost pet faster, it's worth every effort." Raj's wildlife tracking skills found a new purpose too. He started volunteering to help search for lost pets, teaching other volunteers how to look for signs of animal movement in the wilderness. "Every lost pet leaves clues," he would explain, showing them how to spot tracks, identify common hiding places, and understand animal behavior patterns. The community response was overwhelming. Local businesses started displaying lost pet posters prominently. The veterinary clinic where Luna had been treated offered free microchipping events. Even the police department agreed to share lost pet alerts on their social media channels. "You know what's really amazing?" Priya said to Raj as they updated the website one day. "Luna's story is helping so many other animals find their way home." She was right. In just a few months, their network had helped reunite dozens of lost pets with their families. Luna seemed to understand her role in all of this. During volunteer training sessions, she would sit patiently as Raj used her story to explain wilderness survival. When families came to post about their lost pets, she would gently approach them, offering comfort in a way only a dog who had been through it could. As Raj watched Luna one evening, now healthy and happy with her family, he thought about how a single morning of changed plans had sparked such widespread positive change. His camera had captured many amazing wildlife moments over the years, but nothing compared to witnessing and sharing the power of hope, love, and community that Luna's story had inspired. 1 year after Luna's rescue, the morning sun painted the same mountain trails where Raj had found her. But this time, Luna wasn't trapped and afraid. She was leading the way, her nose to the ground, tracking scents with purpose. Her once broken leg showed barely a trace of a limp as she moved confidently through the familiar terrain. "She knows exactly what she's doing," Raj said proudly to Priya, who was walking beside him. Now 13, Priya had become one of their youngest and most dedicated search team members. Luna had inspired her to learn everything she could about search and rescue techniques, and she was already showing a natural talent for it. Today's search was for a small terrier that had gone missing during her family's hiking trip 3 days ago. Luna's experience in the wilderness made her uniquely qualified to help. She seemed to understand exactly where a scared, lost dog might hide. Her own time alone in these mountains had given her a special kind of wisdom. "Look at her body language," Priya whispered, pointing to Luna's suddenly alert posture. Everyone on the search team had learned to trust Luna's instincts. When she showed interest in an area, they knew to search it thoroughly. Sure enough, within minutes they heard a faint whimpering coming from beneath a rocky overhang. The lost terrier was cold and hungry, but otherwise unharmed. As the team worked to safely retrieve it, Luna sat patiently nearby, her calm presence seeming to reassure the frightened dog. It was almost as if she was saying, "I know exactly how you feel, and everything will be okay." Back in town, the pet rescue network that had grown from Luna's story was thriving. The Sharma's living room wall now displayed dozens of photos, all successful reunions between lost pets and their families. Each picture told a story of hope, perseverance, and the incredible power of community coming together. "Remember when we couldn't even imagine finding Luna?" Mrs. Sharma asked during a volunteer meeting. "Now look at how many families have been brought back together because of her story." The network had expanded to neighboring towns, with Luna's photo proudly displayed on their website as the inspiration behind it all. Luna's own transformation was remarkable. Her coat was now thick and glossy, her eyes bright with confidence. The only hints of her ordeal were a slight silver streak in her fur where the worst injury had been, and the wise, gentle way she approached scared animals. These weren't imperfections, they were badges of honor that told her incredible story. Dr. Mera often used Luna's case to educate pet owners about the importance of microchipping and proper identification. Luna's story could have ended very differently, she would explain. But thanks to her microchip, her family's never-ending hope, and one photographer's changed plans that morning, we have this amazing happy ending instead. Raj's photography career had evolved in wonderful ways. His wildlife photos now shared space with powerful images of animal rescues and reunions. But his favorite photograph remained the first one he took of Luna after her recovery, sitting proudly on the same mountain trail where he'd found her, her eyes full of joy and wisdom. "You know what's really special?" Priya said one evening as they finished another successful search. "Luna didn't just survive out there, she came back to help others. She turned something scary into something beautiful." Luna, hearing her name, pressed against Priya's leg affectionately, her tail wagging gently. The sun was setting over the mountains as they headed home, painting the sky in the same colors as that fateful morning 1 year ago. Luna walked confidently between Raj and Priya, no longer a dog in distress but a hero in her own right. Her story had become more than just a tale of survival. It was a reminder that sometimes life's most difficult moments can lead to the most beautiful transformations.